then he got involved with my father distributing, and it didn't end so well for him. he went away.
Did he disappear too?
Yeah.
Wow.
People have a tendency to do that around him.
Wow. Well, hello again. Today is another interview for the podcast Chalice Paul Disappeared, the True Story. And today we probably have one of the most special guests who is coming forward to contribute their input on the story behind Chalice Paul. And he happens to be the youngest son of John Paul Sr. And even though I knew who he was, we've never spoken before, although recently we've been talking extensively. And he is actually an incredible person, I'm finding out. And, I wasn't expecting such a great rapport with this gentleman, but it seems to be working out beautifully. And I just want him to tell his side of the story of events, because after all, even though a parent does something wrong, then sometimes it gets carried down to their children, and even though they weren't responsible for whatever wrongdoing the parent did. This happens a lot with siblings as well. So let me introduce to you Mr. Leslie Michael Paul, but don't call him Leslie, okay? Hi.
I go by Michael Paul.
Okay.
And I have since I was a little kid. The only one that was allowed to call me Leslie was my grandma.
Yeah.
But, I met Chalice back in when she and my father started dating. And she came and said, Mike, is it okay if I stay here at the house? And I was like, well, I just got one specific requirement. Don't change up my rules. I mean, don't interfere with my life. I mean, I'm happy that you're here, and I'm sure the old man and you'll get along and all that good stuff. But don't. I mean, I've got my own ways. Well, next time I was getting fined for every sock I left on the floor. $1 a sock.
Wow.
And next thing I know, I was having to pay rent. It was costing me my whole paycheck. I learned up real quick to pick up my socks. Other than that, we got along great. She was a wonderful person.
Wow. How much, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Sister.
I'm sorry to interrupt you for a minute. How much money did she make off of your socks?
$1 a sock. She would charge me $1 a sock if I left them on the floor.
And what if you didn't pay her?
Well, no, the old man would take it out of my check because I was working at his race shop.
So he abided by this new house rule.
I was working for free for a while until I realized somebody better get me a hamper. So I put my socks in. This ain't working out so well.
Well, I guess monetary value carries some weight. So you learned to pick up your socks then. How old were you when you met Chalice?
Probably 13, somewhere in there.
Wow.
I'm 57 now, so do the math.
Okay.
It was a while ago.
So you're working in the shop for your dad at 13?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's violation of child labor laws.
He didn't see it that way.
I'm sure he didn't.
And, I was just sweeping the floors up and, doing all that kind of stuff, and working in the body shop. And then when I got to 15, I went and got my driver's license. In Georgia, you can get your driver's license at 15, and then he sent me down to go get my CDL license at 15, so I could go pick up the Shadow Racing truck from in Monterey, California, and drive it back at 15 years old. So
wow.
after that, I was the transporter and refuel the cars during the races, stuff like that. During the summer.
So you learned from the bottom up, basically, the racing business.
He was in house, kind of like my brother did. He did the same situation, and he got to have a racing career. I was the year everything hit the fan. I was supposed to go to driver's school, but that never came about.
So that was in 1983. And how old were you then?
I was just turned 18, and you had to be 18 to go to the racing schools. But so I'd worked my way up through the ranks, and my brother was actually going to pay for it because I never did the trade that my brother had to go through to get his racing career going.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So he was going to help me out with that. Boy, I'd have smoked him. But such is life.
Such is life. Okay. So
yeah, Chalice was a wonderful lady. I mean, she had her little quirks, and then they had their little spats and whatnot. I tried to explain to her, he's not like other people you've been with. You just don't want to piss him off, don't want to poke the bear. And she kept poking.
well, I think that she was a little disillusioned in their relationship at the beginning, but I understand that she had a shirt on at the racetrack at Lime Rock Park, and not sure if she had that on when they actually were in the infield and got married. I can't really tell, but I remember Peg Gilman, the registrar for the racing community, and another woman, I believe her name was Mary Morgan, if I'm not mistaken. When they saw that shirt on her, they were looking at each other and saying, I wonder how long that's going to last, because it says, I'm the boss.
It said what?
It said, I'm the boss. Her shirt said, I'm the boss. And they were saying, I wonder how long that's going to last.
They didn't last very long. They got married, and then they jumped on a boat to go to Europe. And they were on the boat for I don't know how long it is, but everybody already had a girlfriend on the boat also.
That was Queen Elizabeth II that was sailing over for...
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, for the 24-hour Le Mans race.
So they got Europe, and the old man, had his girlfriend downstairs at the bar, and somehow locked the door from the outside. I don't know if that's a custom there that they have locks on the outside that you can lock your doors to keep your kids in or whatever, but he thought he was going to keep his wife in.
Huh.
No. She climbed down the trellis and came walking up to the bar, slammed her beer down on the counter, said thanks for the seat, and sat between them.
Oh, that's pretty bold.
She was bold. She had a presence about her. I mean, she had a real strong will and an interesting way about her.
Well, I believe that woman...
It kind of hurt her when she came back early and he wasn't with her.
Wow.
And I could tell she was distressed.
So how could a marriage work if he was expecting her to okay behavior like that and bring this woman? I believe that woman's.
I didn't agree with it. I didn't understand it. I mean, I was still a kid, What the heck,
Wow.
But I'd seen dozens of women come and go. By that time Chalice came around, I had 3 storage rooms full of furniture from the different women that would come and rearrange the house and redecorate. And so I was like, well, this is just number 4 or 5 or 6. I've lost count, but so I was just okay. Well, it's just another one of them things, but. Actually, she stuck around for a good while, and I moved out of the house after the stuff started getting interesting, like the blue mashed potatoes incident.
Oh yeah, tell us about that.
Well, she got depressed a little bit and started taking some Valiums, and she figured, I guess maybe she'd put some Valiums in the mashed potatoes and calm the old man down, because he had a violent temper. And so I come home after our day at the shop, and I sit down to eat, and the old man's like, after about 3 or 4 bites, he's like, Mike, put your fork down. Why? He's like, well, look at the color of the mashed potatoes. They got a little blue tint to them, don't they? So he scraped the mashed potatoes off my plate, scraped his off his plate, made her eat the whole bowl right in front of me.
Wow.
I mean, I don't know, like she put her value she put in there, but it was enough to tip him. And it didn't seem to phase her much.
Did she pass out after that? Did she fall asleep?
I'm sorry?
Did she pass out, fall asleep?
No, she was fine. Actually, they got along very well after that incident that night. They all drank some wine, and I think we opened up a $500 bottle of wine and some Dom Perignon, and so it was copacetic.
Well, I guess there wasn't enough in there that she was having attempted to kill somebody.
No, she wasn't trying to kill anybody. She was just trying to calm his ass down.
Right. Well,
he would come home a little, upset, and so one day, he asked me to do the dishes. I'm thinking, well, Clarice lives here, and she's the housekeeper.
yeah, Clarice. Just so people. I don't want to interrupt you. I mean, I need to interrupt you for a minute. Sorry, but people don't know who Clarice. Clarice is the older sister of Chalice, who's since passed away.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So go ahead.
Wonderful person as well.
Okay.
I mean, I got along great with her. Me and her hit it off, but so I was going to a Jimmy Buffett concert that evening, and I forgot to do the dishes. But I'm thinking, well, Clarice is there, and she's a housekeeper. She'll take care of that. And the old man was just, casual. Hey, before you leave, go, take care of the dishes. Well, dang it, I forgot. And I forgot my tickets, so I came back to the house, and the old man apparently was on the phone, and the conversation didn't go well. Next thing I know, he's throwing a 10-pound glass ashtray and hits me in the ribs, breaks 3 of my ribs.
Wow.
I'm like, that hurt. So I go back out to my car, go start my car, and he comes out and pulls the hood up, just yanks it right open without latched. I mean, just broke the latch off and everything. Pulled the fuel injection line off, so the car's sputtering. Then grabs me out of the car, pulls me out by my hair, and I had a 6-pack of bottles of beer, and I pulled one of them out and smashed it on the ground and stabbed him in the stomach.
Oh my God.
I got back to my car because he staggered away. Because he's bleeding and cut like hell. And so I went, got my car, and I'm going to head to his race shop and just run the car right into the front of his showroom and hopefully burn the place down as I die. But luckily, my brother, I stopped at my brother's house just to let him know bye, and he said, no. I was mad enough to. So he brought me down to the hospital, and they're wrapping my ribs up. And they said, well, we had another Mr. Paul in here earlier. Stomach cut. You any relation? I was like, nah.
That's funny.
It was an interesting life.
Wow. And did your brother reason with you that by you burning down his showroom would have potentially cost you your life? In that regard?
Well, I was expected to die that. I was going in there at high speed. I wasn't planning on coming out.
Oh, you were going to just ram it in there. Okay, gotcha. All right. Well,
yeah, I was going on a kamikaze mission.
Wow, you were that upset. You were willing to risk your own life.
Yeah, luckily my brother had the foresight to say, Mike, you might have a longer life and you'll see better days. That's why I moved away.
Oh, okay.
So I was not around when Chalice left, and because I went away. I was like, I can't take this no more.
Well, I can't blame you on that part. Where did you go?
No.
You went back to your mother's?
Well, I went out to Lake Lanier and stayed out there for couple of years. But and met my son's mom out there. But anyways, he told me like a year or so later. I was like, "Oh, where's Chalice at?" And he said, "Well, she moved to Texas." I'm like, okay, well, as far as I gave it much thought after that, because, like I said, I've seen women come and go at his place, and, I've seen guys, that were working there or working for him. I'd be playing pool with them, and then 2 weeks later, he'd be showing me where they washed up in Spain, and I'd ask him, well, what happened? He said, well, he pissed me off. Oh. Remind me not to do that.
Wow. Well, that's pretty profound. I'm glad you brought that up because I wasn't going to mention it. But that I can't find anything on a Google search actually on that one. But that's interesting that he would share information like that with his own son.
Well, he just gave me a heads up that, this is what happens when someone pisses me off, So, don't piss me off.
So, do you think that he had a psychosis, sociopathic behavior or psychopathic behavior because people don't normally, treat their children like that. You don't get into fights with them and you have to stab your father to break free from him and, that.
He was just having one of them bad days. I don't know if it's psychopathic or he got a little delusional. emotional at the end, and I kept telling him, especially when he started building it in South Georgia. And I mean, I didn't even know about it for 6 months. They were already in the process of
the underground bunker. The underground bunker.
Yeah, the underground bunker.
Yes.
Yeah.
Talk about that, because most people have.
They got satellites above that could detect anomalies like that. This is probably not a really good idea.
No. Well, let me explain this to the audience that's listening, okay? Because I know the whole history. I read all the what court docket papers I could get, but also the newspaper articles that are archived. But John Paul Sr., your father, built an underground system in south of Atlanta to put in generators and lights and containers underground on farmland to grow his own marijuana, so he wouldn't have to import it anymore, because he obviously was an importer of marijuana to finance his racing business, and he was building Porsches. So go ahead, explain the underground bunker now.
Well, I never actually laid eyes on it, because I didn't want to be involved in that to begin with. It just sounded like a really, really bad idea. But my brother told me about that. They had a trailer and up above it, and that was an entrance, and then they were bringing in all sorts of steel beams, and they got it all built, and everything was ready. They brought 2 giant generators on 2 semis to run the lights, and everything was all set and ready to go. But there was never a seed ever planted.
Oh, so they never actually got it off the ground and grew any plants down there in the process?
Never got a single seed, and it was, I think, all hydroponics that they were going to do. But no, apparently they had pictures from helicopters and whatnot, the surveillance of the whole operation. And at the time, he was on the lam, because he'd already jumped bail and put up his race shop and his house for collateral, $2 million. And while he was doing this operation down in South Georgia, but they had pictures of him and pictures of everybody that was involved. And so when they came and confiscated that property, he was heading down to Miami, and he was getting ready to hit a plane. And one of the guys, Mike Allen, I think he was bringing him a fake passport and ID, John Davis, I believe it was. And they approached him and said, "Hey, we got pictures." They showed him pictures of him, the old man, and everybody involved that was working on that damn thing for the whole time, from groundbreaking ceremony to the whole finished product.
So the feds were already on to what he was doing, but they let him continue the construction.
Yeah. Obviously, they could see his face and everything on there, because they were showing Mike Allen, "Hey, we got pictures of who's this guy right here?" And he's like, "I don't know." He's, "Well, we just seen you talking with him a couple hours ago. Who is this guy?"
That's amazing. And this was in the 80s, when surveillance wasn't as good as it is now, obviously. But you have to explain to the public why he went on the lam. This is because he got, and I believe, now you're going to tell your version. I believe that Stephen Carson was shot 5 times in Crescent Beach, Florida, under the pretense that he was getting ready to rat out John Paul. Now, Stephen's version of events is that he never did that. He served time in a holding cell in New Orleans jail to outlive the grand jury, the life of the grand jury, because he refused to roll over anybody. And when he was shot and the authorities came to him in the hospital, they didn't even know he was associated with John Paul. Now, he was the boat captain. He was the captain. He was helping bringing in the Halls into Louisiana. That's a fact. They actually found, they didn't find any marijuana, no product. They might have gotten a little bit of residue or whatever. But it was, he went to a store and bought something. I think it was a pen. He bought a pen. And that pen sent the feds to the store, and then they ID'd Stephen Carson by a pen that he purchased. So they did their good due diligence and investigative work to finally find out who Steve Carson was based on the boat. Now, you can tell your version of what you think of why your father shot him. Go ahead. You go.
From what my brother told me, they were bringing in 3 boats at the time, and they raised one drawbridge and they went under it, got to the next one and they wouldn't open it, and so all 3 boats were stuck in between the drawbridges, and then the lights started flashing on the boats that they were coming after, so they just beached the boats and got the hell on down the road. But they had already made a couple of stops and made some unloading. Okay, so they ended up getting stopped and arrested. I think they confiscated the trailer with some in it, whatnot. But so all 3 of them got a slap on the wrist by the sheriff and the judge from Shreveport. But
they had to pay a fine. I remember they paid a fine, but they didn't serve time, correct? None of them served time.
No, it was a slap on the wrist because the sheriff and the judge confiscated their boats and confiscated what left of the load that they had, because they were in their own business.
Okay. So they were corrupt. They were corrupt, and they were gonna resell it. This is not unusual. I've heard this happen with law enforcement agencies.
So years later, after we thought that was all just a big slap on the wrist, no problem and everything, I guess he got into some more trouble doing some importing of some cocaine or something. And they said, well, roll over on someone and we'll reduce your sentence. And so he pointed to the sheriff and the judge as someone to, because he was obviously scared of the old man, which rightfully should be. And so the sheriff or the judge got a hold of my father and said, hey, we're going to have to bring these charges back up unless you take care of this problem here.
So you're saying that a judge and a sheriff commissioned your father to kill Stephen Carson?
Well, they said to take care of the problem. That was my father's words.
Okay.
Because he took me on a sailing trip from Cape Hatteras down to Jacksonville. And so, I didn't know why I was going on this sailing trip. It had been a while since we sailed. But, well, shit. We might as well. And some of the worst weather he'd ever been in his life. 25, 30-foot rollers and waves rolling over the boat and shit. Anyways, when we get down towards Jacksonville and he starts telling me about this problem he's got, and I'm like, well, how is that my problem? Well, I need you to handle this. And I'm like, well, dude, I'm not a violent man.
Wow.
You never. I don't drive a Porsche. I don't have no money. I never made any dime off of what you do, but I am not going to commit that.
So he basically wanted you. He was going to try to commission his youngest son to kill another individual on hearsay. He didn't have any proof. Hearsay, basically. That's what it amounts to. It was a senseless crime. In my opinion, it was a senseless crime. But to commission his youngest son, you, is the lowest that a father could go. I never dreamt in a million years until I spoke to you and you told me this story that John Paul would be the type of man that would hire anybody else to do his dirty work because he never would want a witness. Now, say devil's advocate, if you said, okay, how much are you going to pay me, like a hitman, and he says, I'll give you, $100,000, and you follow through, do you think you'd still be alive today?
Probably not.
Okay. So, yes.
He'd cleaned up his mess.
Exactly.
I would have been a mess.
Okay, so we know that there was another gentleman that Stephen Carson was doing business with this drug smuggling operation. It's only a little quirk in a couple of newspaper articles that are archived that mention his name, and his name is David Casorla. David Casorla disappeared off the face of the earth, and another gentleman by the name of Richard Berlin. But Richard Berlin resurfaced and flew into Miami to sign papers to sell some real estate. So it was rumored that Richard Berlin potentially fled and went to Israel because he was Jewish. David was Jewish too, but David was a local boy. He was from Gainesville. Now, the other people that were lower underlings to this operation, I'm just going to say that because I really don't know, but they were not of any great importance in the investigation, had told Stephen Carson that David Casorla, now this is hearsay, was in a plane with your father 60 miles off of St. Augustine, and he pushed him out of the plane. Is that something your father would do? Because obviously if a body hits the ocean, of course he would probably snap his neck and die instantly from the height ratio. But that would be a body that would float and could have floated to shore. Is that a possibility that he would have committed a crime like that?
Oh, that ain't shocking, but that's news to me. But yeah.
I mean,
the smoke of reality is very, very credibly
possible. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, he left a small young child. She was a baby then. She actually found me and his daughter, which is the joy of building. No, I'm talking about David Casorla's daughter. She actually found me, lovely girl, and she just wanted answers, like most people of the past, like even including myself. That's why I'm doing this podcast. But she actually friended Richard Berlin's daughter, and I find that extremely interesting. Of course, they don't want to participate in a podcast. They're scared, like most people are, of what could transpire from it, especially if they think that their parent was murdered. And the bond continued from a friendship that was probably dysfunctional because they were doing illegal activity. That's how they became buddies, and they knew each other, but one lived, the other one disappeared. You never heard a word of David Casorla. And it's sad. It's sad. She just wanted to have any kind of familiarity with somebody during that era in time, and to find out if there was any stories about her father that she wanted to know. I'm glad that I built the website because I never would have had anybody contact me, and she contacted me through social media, which is even more interesting because I've found so many people through social media. But you said that he he showed you an article of somebody who floated ashore in Spain. Was it Spain or was it some other part of Europe, possibly? That.
No, his name was Bubba.
Yeah.
Was what I knew him by, and he lived at our house in Florida for about 2 or 3 months. Did some work for my father. I'm sure helping unload or whatever.
Right. Well, there was a Bubba. He's since passed away.
And then I was like, well, what happened to Bubba? He floated up in Spain. He showed me an article in the paper about him.
Was that a local paper or was that a Spanish paper?
What's that?
Was that a local paper, a Florida paper, or a Spanish paper?
Yeah, Brevard News or whatever. I don't know what. But
what? How old were you?
Brevard County.
How old were you when you saw that? Were you living in Merritt Island, your mom's house then?
Yeah, I was living in Merritt Island. I might have been 11.
Around 11.
Something like that.
Well, that's interesting because there's no connection to him. Now, there was another gentleman who found me on social media. He lives in South Carolina. Really nice guy. He actually solved a missing person case. I'm very impressed, and I actually featured him on the Chalice Paul missing person page. And his name is Matthew McDaniel, and he's a service guy, former service guy, and he had an interest in a crime that he knows it was foul play. In this case, they had the bodies. They just don't know their names. But the story is this couple was murdered, and they think it was drug-related, drug smuggling related, or drug dealing related, and it was near a racing track in South Carolina. I can't recall the name of the town, but that there was the alleged culprit had a T-shirt on that was from Sebring racetrack, and it was a truck. And we're talking in the 70s. We're talking about late 70s. So this is before Chalice ever came in the picture. I think it was 1976. It's John and Jane Doe. And that's still an open investigation that's in South Carolina. But, when I did some research on it, I couldn't find a track that was affiliated with your father's races, because he... before he formed JLP, didn't he have another category of racing with the GT division or whatever? I'm not that familiar with the racing circuit. But when he first started racing, what kind of cars was it that he was racing?
When my father was a racer back in the 60s and whatnot, raced Corvettes and Cobras. But when he started his racing career again, once he got established in his business, then we went to JLP Racing, John Lee Paul, and me and my brother raced in Formula Fords for 1 year, won the championship, won most of the races, and then went instantly to racing Porsche 935s, and that's predominantly what we ran.
But in the 70s, what was he racing?
We helped other teams,
right?
In the racing.
What?
I mean, we ran with Preston Hand and Keeper Swap Shop.
Right. Yeah, we talked about him extensively too. Yeah, he's since passed away, and he lives in my neck of the woods over here.
He was a good man.
I wish I could have met him before he died. I wanted to go down to the swap shop and see him because I heard that he was just riding around in his golf cart, barking orders at everybody till the day he died, basically.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
That sounds just like him.
But he's featured in Randy Lanier's new docu-series documentary. They did a trailer anyways. He got a company from California who he signed up with, and he actually took some interest in the portion of the production end, which is probably smart because then he has some creative rights to that. story, but there's a trailer. I was trying to find it. I was going to send it to you, and it's quite impressive because of what happened to him. He served 26 years of a life sentence for drug smuggling, and that is so bizarre because your father, as we suspect or allegedly believe, that he was responsible for other missing people besides Chalice Paul and Colleen Wood, which we'll get into Colleen Wood in a minute. But, he shot a man 5 times, and he survived to testify against him. But here you got Randy Lanier, who was just, your average drug smuggler, and he was a race car driver too with no priors and had a family and he had a family life and everything, but he got a life sentence. I feel that during that era in time, because of the frustration of trying to capture your father who fled and was found in Switzerland, going to a Swiss bank, and they got him over there for 9 months in a holding cell because of having a fake passport and fake ID, etc. And strangely enough, I heard through the grapevine that it was actually a Swiss hooker he was hooked up with that was working with Interpol to do the sting operation to nail him when he was going into the bank. And I understand that Hope Haywood Paul was with him, with their daughter, and he was the woman he married after Chalice disappeared. But Chalice and his divorce were never finalized. I've already done my timeline with all my documentation, and he got a divorce allegedly in Haiti, and that information was given to me by Hope's stepfather, who was a prominent lawyer at the time. He's since passed away, Don Rubin, and he he was based in California. I forgot the name of the town, a very exclusive area of Southern California, and he was originally from Chicago, so he had a practice in Chicago and in California, and he basically told me he investigated his stepson, because that would be his stepson, right? When he married Hope Haywood to see if he was a bigamist, and he found that he actually got a divorce in Haiti and quote unquote said, because Chalice didn't need to be present in Haiti, you don't need your spouse to get a divorce. Now watch, everybody that hears this who has an idea they want to get a divorce, they're going to run to Haiti right now. Well, if they want to knock off their wife, they're going to knock her off and then go to Haiti and get the divorce finalized, because that's what he basically did, because he said that she was probably already shark bait, and I was floored. I mean, this is a prominent lawyer who's telling me this over the phone, but the first thing he said to me when I started conversing with him, are you law enforcement? No. Are you a private investigator? No. I was a friend of Chalice's. I just found out about another missing woman, and I'm trying desperately to get some answers and locate her family members, because I had lost contact from my first attempt to get justice for her in Atlanta in 1982. So, anyways, it was interesting to find out that in the state of Georgia, Chalice filed for divorce, and then she stopped it 10 days later and filed for alimony. That's another motive for him to get rid of her. She wanted money. She was pissed. This relationship was short-lived, and they weren't married that long. It was already a volatile relationship based on her honeymoon in Le Mans, France. He actually married Hope because she was pregnant with AJ. And I guess you're safe as a woman if you make a baby with him, because he never hurt your mother, right?
No. He was always very good to my mom. No. He did her well, took care of her. When they split up, he gave her the money for the house, and she lived off that money till the day she died.
So, I gotta.
It grew up to over $1 million because it kept multiplying, and it was like $1.5 million when she passed away. I moved up to Indiana to take care of her, and I knew what it was 10 years before, but all of a sudden when he got out of prison,
How did he get the money out? Was it in his name too? Why did he give it to him?
Well, he made the account to begin with, so he had a back door to it. I mean, he made all the arrangements, and she just lived off the interest.
Gotcha.
But when he got out, I got a notice that, well, I'm going to get $100,000, and if I disagree, then I won't get a dime.
And he took the rest of it.
So next thing I know, he's buying a $500,000 boat and put another $500,000 into the boat. And I'm like, okay.
What about
where that money went?
What about your other brother and your sister? Were you like equal beneficiaries to your mother's estate?
Yeah. My sister bought a new house, and my brother bought a new house and a new Porsche or whatever. So they got their share, and I got squat.
So he took $500,000 for himself, and then he gave you $100,000, and he gave them the difference of $400,000. You can't really buy a house.
It was $1.5 million 10 years before that. It just kept compounding interest, you know,
Okay.
and on top of what they was giving my mom to. So there was several $1 million in there when she passed away.
Oh, so it was more than just $1 million. It was.
So they got money. I got a little chump change. I didn't do nothing for it, but so I wasn't sweating it. Hey, $100,000. You know, I'm not gonna say no.
So
I invested mine into business and made money with it.
well,
They invested theirs in getting new houses and, you know, cars and different things.
and that was Junior still married to Trish, Paul, then, or was that after?
He was still married to Trish, I think, at the time.
Right. Okay. Because they used to own 2 houses in Wellington together, which was I often wonder how that happened, because you don't make that much money as a race car driver. I mean, unless you win, and then you make a lot more, right?
That's how that all came about, I guess.
Right.
But,
Well, I got a question to ask you, and this is a name that we didn't discuss before, but it was in the archives. It's a fact. Your mother married a guy by the name of Earl Thrower. Do you remember Earl?
that doesn't ring a bell at the moment.
Really? Because he was also involved in that whole smuggling circuit, too. There's a paper article with his name in it, and that's the only thing I can find. But I did find that when she still owned the house in Merritt Island, she went from, her real name's Glenda Joyce McGoggy, but that was her birth name. But she became a Paul. And then she went to, and I'll send it to you so you can see it. And then she became, Joyce Thrower, and then she divorced him. It wasn't a long marriage, and then she divorced him and went back to the name Paul. That's archived. That's a paper trail. And I didn't know, and I don't know where Earl went. Do you think?
You're talking about my mom?
Yeah, your mom. Your mom married Earl. Now, where in the heck is Earl?
When my mom and my father divorced, she got up with this guy named Butch Huggins or Higgins or something to that effect, and married him for a bit. But then he got involved with my father and distributing, and it didn't end so well for him. He went away.
Did he disappear too?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
People have a tendency to do that. had around him.
Wow, that's Butch Higgins. Now this is like, you know, I mean, Hollywood needs to make a film about this. This is mind blowing. Okay. Now I think his real name was Earl, and it reminds me of the song Dix.
He went by Bush. I don't
Must
know
be
what
his
name was. I never looked at his ID.
Must be his alias.
He had to do some what was them pills back in the day? 714s.
Oh, Quaaludes.
And he wrecked a Porsche of my old man's, and that didn't really please my old man very well.
So
that was 928 Porsche, and totaled it out into some trees, and so we didn't hear from him shortly after that.
yeah, well, she obviously divorced him, but that divorce would happen in America, so he must have been alive to sign the papers, and then maybe he disappeared afterwards, or I don't know. Things are interesting back then because, you know, your father's lawyer, who is licensed in the state of Georgia, actually was involved in the sale of the house in Merritt Island. He was the one that was...
Bruce Whitmer?
Yes, Bruce Whitmer, exactly. And I'm like...
Who's that guy? That guy is a straight-up guy. Don't discredit him now. He's a good...
But is he licensed? Was he licensed in Florida, too?
He would have juggled some books, I guess, but...
Well, you know, I met him at your father's house when Chalice was alive, and he swears it wasn't him, but he also told me that, oh, well, I had a hard time. The FBI was following me and you know, tapping my phone and everything, and they had good reason. Now I know they did because they were discussing a Quaalude transaction that Senior was doing. I mean, you don't normally talk about illegal activity in front of your lawyer. I'm not saying that he was involved in drug smuggling, but, you know, maybe he was helping him with the profits of the illegal activity, which is not unusual, right? I mean, lawyers, I knew a lawyer got in trouble for washing money on a drug operation that was under investigation in Miami, Florida, back during this whole era and time as well, in the early 80s. It was prevalent back then with drug smuggling. Everybody was making money. Cocaine was flying around left and right, and lawyers were weekend users and partying it up and hitting nightclubs and snorting in the bathroom. So this was an era and time that was, you know, it was crazy. It was crazy, and of course with that,
it was different times back then. That's for sure.
Yeah, and there was a lot of violence, as you know, with the Colombians and the Cubans were fighting, and you know the cartel, what we call them cartel. It was. You know, the Medellin cartel was, you know, very vicious, and there were a lot of massacres, and people dying left and right, and it was bad. It was bad back then. Cocaine created more violence than marijuana did, but marijuana was very lucrative, even though it was bulky. It was hard to maneuver and get it in, but there was a strong demand for it from the 70s into the 80s. But this is interesting.
This is true. But my old man never imported any cocaine
that you know of.
I mean, he did his fair share. Hell, he turned me on when I was 13 years old.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that.
Try this stuff. He said, come and try this thing. A group of friends around it, and he's like, hey, try a little spoonful of this. I'm like, took a sniff. And I try the other side, and I took another sniff. He says, all right, now go to bed. About 30 minutes later, I come out and I said, I didn't get nothing out of that. Can I have some more? They'll start laughing.
Oh, my God. And years old.
My introduction to that.
Unbelievable. And then,
alrighty then. He goes, well, here's a couple Quaaludes. Don't forget you gotta go to school in the morning.
wow.
About 4:35 when we stopped partying, but
That is the most bizarre story you told me. Well, there's a couple other bizarre stories you told me, but that one.
it was definitely interesting times.
Yes.
When the old man went off to Europe one time, he left and he brought this friend of his, Crystal. We called her the Quaalude Queen. I mean, I've actually seen stacks and stacks of Quaaludes of packets that I guess they came from Mexico or something, stacked up on the floor upstairs. I mean, hundreds of them.
Wow.
And she could eat 5 or 6 of them, no problem, and still drive. I mean, she thought she could drive anyways. But, anyways, he left her in charge of taking care of the house when he went away. And then about 5 days later, he calls the phone and it's like, let me talk to Crystal. I was like, hell, I ain't seen her in 4 days. I mean, I'm 13 years old still, you know. I don't know where she's at. You know, she took the damn Suburban, and that's the last I seen the taillights heading out. Son of a bitch. He called her friend, Fran, and Fran came down and he sent her somebody to take care of the house, you know, pay the bills and whatnot, because he was gone for a couple months. And, well, me and Fran got a little friendly.
Yeah.
Not because she attacked me. I mean, I was the aggressor on this one. I didn't attack her. I just, you know, we finally got together.
Oh, so you propositioned her.
I was living with a 26-year-old and at 13 and enjoying life.
What was that? Fran was the 26-year-old.
Fran Autry.
She was the 26-year-old. Wow. Okay. Well, they call that statutory rape this day and age.
No, she didn't rape me.
Well, I mean,
she did not rape me.
well, certain states, I don't know.
Was pursuing it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what the laws are in Georgia for that. I know in California, it's not.
This was in Florida still.
Right.
But, and she said no many times, and I was like, come on, you know, we're still partying and, you know, getting it on. Finally, she's like, my goodness. So, you know, we were together till I was almost 16 years old.
So you had your first relationship.
The old man moved off to Georgia, and I was still living with her.
It took place in Florida. Oh, so all this took place in the state of Florida. Wow, that's interesting.